Welcome to the Couch Time Podcast, where we give you tools to connect with your kids and point them to Jesus. I'm Steven. I hate that I say and I'm not going to say it the rest of this podcast. I'm Steven, and I'm here with Ryan Conlon. And this is week numero cuatro of going through Engaging Your Teen's World, book by David Eden and Jeremiah Callahan with Alan Briggs. We're talking through chapter 4, and it's going to be a great time. So, Ryan, you were on podcast number 3, chapter 3. Brief overview. What was chapter 3 about?
All right, chapter 3, the main idea of chapter 3 was a reminder that you, as parents, are likely the student's primary spiritual influence. Mm-hmm. So, we talked about, there were 2 sections, balancing wisdom and wonder. So you, as parents, have wisdom to offer. Students have wonder, a picture of what the kingdom of God here on earth could be. But that's clouded by sin. You, as parents, have wisdom to sort of help students navigate that and sort of realize some of the things that they have wonder about. The kingdom of God. So,
In chapter 4, a lot of this book really has been about conversation because relationships are built on conversation.
Yes, sir.
And relationship is how you show care, how you show love, how you impart the truths of the gospel to your child and point them to Christ in a way that they can understand God on a deeper level through your conversations, through your life, through your heart posture, through engaging them where they're at in the world that they're currently living in. This chapter, I felt like it has a lot of great starting points for us to think about and discuss, but I feel like we're going to kind of dig into it even deeper than the chapter discusses and hopefully elaborate in a way that provides even some more helpful application, as the chapter kind of leaves a little short in some ways, I believe, but hopefully some of our insight as we've thought about we'll expound upon what the chapter's talking about. But the main point from this chapter, if you didn't get to read it, ultimately is found on page 55. It's a great quote. It says, "Whoever is having the daily conversations with teens will be the one they come to when they're struggling, doubting, searching, or celebrating something awesome in their life." So whoever's been in the trenches with them, having the hard conversations, talking on a regular basis, has shown that they care over a long period of time, will be the person a kid runs to in times of greatness, in times of awesome things they're excited about, because they'll know that you'll celebrate it with them, but also in times of confusion, of doubting, of hurt, of pain, where they're like, I can go to this person because I've built trust with them. So this chapter is ultimately, how can you as a parent be more into those conversations? How can you engage in conversations more often? What are things that kill conversations? What are things that aid conversations? And how can you partake in a conversation that shows that you care? So to start off, the beginning of the chapter, it says conversation killers. So it says, what are killers to conversations? And this is something I think is helpful, because if we start with what kills conversations, we then can figure out how to eliminate those factors so that we can engage in better conversation. So off the top of your head or through the book, what do you think is like a main thing that kills conversation?
The book highlights, and I think this is a big one, the book highlights speed. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like my life so oftentimes is dictated by my to-do list. Mm-hmm. It's just a constant to-do list. I got to get things done. And so because of that, so do conversations. They just become like a task to complete that needs to be done efficiently. And as opposed to allowing for time to develop with regards to conversation, naturally to ask good questions in conversation, to listen. Mm-hmm. I'm bad at listening. That could be another killer. Yeah. But we so often, even in my relationships, I just want to, listen, move on with the conversation. Yeah. And not allow them to linger and develop and to grow.
Yeah. And I think nowadays, life moves so fast. Your kids have a plethora of things to go to, and you have a plethora of things to get done, and multiple relationships to cultivate: your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your kid, relationship with your friends, your community. So we often feel like we don't have the time needed to have a real conversation, so we try to rush them. And when a conversation is rushed, it probably isn't going to be real. It's probably not going to get deep. And I can even remember, so there's a quote at the very beginning of the book from someone else that says, and we've talked about this on other podcasts, is that conversations often take 7 minutes to really develop. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes it's even more than that. And I remember just recently, my roommates and I had a really, really good conversation late at night, but that conversation took a long time to get to where it ended up being great. We were just sitting around, we're talking, we're shooting the breeze. Then we moved to like the couches and we sit down. But eventually it was like, okay, guys, I want to talk to you about this. And then it became a real conversation. So if we had just had to go to bed right away, or if one of us was gone and had somewhere to get to, we never would have got to that. So keep in mind that speed kills conversation. You are going to have to find ways to have unhurried time with your kid if you're going to have a conversation that leads to depth and leads to their heart, because no one wants to open up right away. And there's just like there's fear of opening up, and it takes a little bit of time to finally jump over the edge to be real with someone that you care about.
Okay, so that was another one. You just hit on it, but what a conversation killer is our desire to be comfortable in conversations, to not let them get real, or to talk about things that might make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, expound a little bit more.
Well, I don't like I'm just thinking about a conversation I had yesterday. It was with I had a car ride and with a friend, and like, all to his credit, we were in the car for 30 minutes together, and he just got honest with me about his life.
Yeah.
And he could have perceived that as being like, oh, it's uncomfortable to talk about. But I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like there was like this barrier broken. We were
Yep.
there was transparency, and it was just really cool.
Yeah.
The conversation got frothy, and I
Yeah.
liked it. So,
Yeah. And if you haven't been having conversations like that with your kid, it's going to take a little bit to get there.
Yep.
Because there's this
Good point.
anxiety associated with it. There's this fear associated with it. Your kid is worried about how you're going to respond, how you're going to act. If they're going to probably throw out some surface level things, even in group time and like in conversations with students at church. You know, the beginning is often very superficial, very
Yep.
oh well, Jesus is really good, and he's like the answer, and yeah, I'm doing well, I'm doing good, and you have to like push and expound, like, what do you mean by that, or why do you think that, where have you seen that, like continuing to ask more and more follow-up questions, but you have to have time to ask multiple follow-up questions, which often we are so hurried that we don't experience that time with our kid. Another thing that the book references and talks about is closed-mindedness kills conversation, and this one was very cool, I think, because we don't often think about ourselves as closed-minded people. I would say the majority of people say, I'm not closed-minded, because nobody wants to be closed-minded. And we understand closed-mindedness to be a bad thing, and yet we look around and we see a lot of closed-minded people. So really stopping to evaluate what is your, kind of like we talked about in chapter 2, but what is your posture towards your child in a conversation? Is it closed-minded in the sense of you're just waiting to get your point across, or waiting to get in your line, or waiting to get to like this end goal that you have set in your mind for this conversation? Or are you genuinely talking and discussing and learning and going back and forth?
Yep. Love it. And along those lines, I think it was at some church conference for leadership or whatever, I heard this line. At first I thought it was corny, but then it resonated with me. It's actually helped me with my marriage, but it's this idea of when people come to you with ideas or conversations, so often my first response is, well, how? And so his idea was substitute wow for how. So it's wow, not how. Like, hey, I've got this idea, I want to do this thing.
Yeah.
I'm so often like, oh, that's such a pain. How are
Yeah.
you going to make that happen? Instead of like, wow, that's a great idea. That's awesome. Let's just leaning in instead of questioning
Yeah.
ideas or points of conversation. Wow,
Yeah.
not how.
And so the book says on page 53, it says, perhaps some of our busyness stems from viewing teenagers as a problem to solve, a task to complete, or an assignment to finish. I think this really even more so, I think, goes with the closed-minded section in the piece underneath it. But when we view kids as a project or an assignment, or you're trying to get them to this certain place in life or this certain knowledge base, what happens is you just start talking at them and hearing what they say and then responding, but really you're just responding based upon what you wanted to say. And it's hard to go to that wow section of like, wow, that's what you think, or wow, that's what you believe. How did you come to that? Why do you believe that? And not in a way of like just listening so that you can like counteract whatever they say or come back with your points, but to really try to develop knowing your child, knowing their heart, knowing their experiences, knowing their life to a degree that shows that you love them. It says in the same on the same page, curiosity shows care. A question shows dignity because you genuinely care what the other person has to say.
Yep.
Curiosity shows care. I love this line. I I know in certain conversations when I felt like someone asked me a question that they have an answer that they want me to say, and it makes me just so mad, and it makes me not want to talk to them about what I'm actually going through because it's like, oh, that was a very like pointed question where you already have the answer in mind of what I'm supposed to say, so you don't actually care what I'm going to say. But being genuinely curious, that's a hard thing to do. But if you come into conversation with a curiosity mindset, I want to learn my kid. I don't want to teach, I don't want to tell them anything like right now, at least in this conversation. I want to learn them. That shows them that you care, which allows you to be the people that have the daily conversations with your kid that then they're going to come to when they need something because they're hurting, they're going through pain, they're really excited about something.
Love it. I've heard just along those lines. I forget who I heard this from, but just viewing students not as a problem to be solved, but a wonder to behold. And I've always liked that. Not that there aren't problems that students have that need fixed, but coming at it with that, okay, there's a wonder to behold. There's things going on in their lives that we need to lean into and behold, figure it out, learn it.
Yeah.
So.
The Lord is working in their life in some way, shape, or another. And he that's so funny.
We had a spill in the background. It's all good.
It happens. But yeah, that's a great line. Not looking at them just to solve them, looking at them to learn them, to love them, so that you can show them who Christ is. Christ doesn't just view you as a problem to solve, a person that he's just trying to make a better person. He views you as his creation, who he loves, who he cares for, who he knows, who he's seen their experiences, and yet still slowly over time is sanctifying us and growing us and isn't rushed in that process in any means. And often we feel rushed in kids' lives, like fix all their problems right now, rather than seeing the grand, long scheme of sanctification and what the Lord's doing in their life. What do you think are some things that encourage good conversation? So we kind of cheated a little bit. We said some things that kill conversations, and the opposite of those probably encourages conversations.
True.
But what are some other things that are, I guess, catalysts to good conversation? How do you set up, as a parent's thinking about, okay, how do I have I want to have conversations with my kids. I want to do this more. I want to get to their heart. What type of environment is helpful for having quality conversation?
Okay, I think they nail it. Page 56, it's hidden down there at the bottom. Don't forget that those hard, weird, or painful situations can be great conversation catalysts. I've found that the weirdest moments in my life make for the best conversations. And I've seen that in my marriage of like, or even the hardest situation. Like I just remember one of the best conversations Emily and I, my wife and I, ever had was when we got locked out of our house for 3 hours in Colorado. It was awful and awesome. Like I was angry, frustrated, and just like it just broke. Anger at myself, like, and it just like we had an awesome conversation.
Yeah,
it was fantastic. It took about an hour to get there.
Yeah, time.
But then we had time.
Yeah.
But then we had 2 hours to still wait for the locksmith.
Yeah.
It was like I think we did. I think it was the day before Thanksgiving is when we locked her, so no one was working.
Yep,
so
a little bit of a stressful time probably.
It was awful. So also a little cold in November in college. Anyway, but it was like great conversation that we had.
Yeah. So viewing what is seemingly a hassle as an opportunity. is a great thing because so I've gone on a lot of trips. Things have gone really wrong in different things in my life, and I just view it in a lot of ways as like, this is probably gonna be a really funny story later, so I can either laugh about it now and enjoy this like thing that's happening, or I can just complain about it and miss out on a great opportunity. Like that is going to be an inside story between you and your wife forever.
Yep.
And in the moment, you could have just been furious and started an argument and been upset, or you can say, okay, this is an opportunity. Like we're stuck here. This is an opportunity to love my wife. And with your kid, crazy things, life is going to happen. In the midst of life is when you have to take advantage of time with your child that they're going to remember And are you going to make it memorable in a way that's like, wow, we really got to talk, we really got to enjoy some time, or not? So taking advantage of the hard, weird, painful situations is a great way. I think one of the lines in this book is that, especially for guys, it says guys talk shoulder to shoulder more than they talk face to face.
Yep.
I found this very much to be true, where it's really uncomfortable for me to look you in the eye and like talk to you about what's going on in my life, talk to you about what I'm struggling with, what is painful. But with a kid, if you can have some sort of experience where you're not having to look at each other, it's helpful to talk. I remember I was having a conversation with a student. It was a really heavy conversation, really hard conversation, and I purposefully drove to a parking lot where the lighting was a little bit darker, and we just sat in the car. We looked straight out the windshield and we chatted.
Yep.
And it was fantastic. And we couldn't really see each other's faces or facial expressions in a lot of ways. We didn't have to look each other right in the eye, but we got to just share a lot of experiences that had been hidden for a long time. And for some reason, even the lighting, the looking not at each other was all like great catalysts to having a conversation. So setting up the environment, I think, is important.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts on like environment? Like what's a helpful environment for conversation, I guess?
Helpful environment. No, I completely agree. Like having something to do tangible is helpful for me. And like, I think that's like one of the positives of COVID is like people picking up new hobbies and doing different things together of like, like taking up fishing. Like for me, like fishing with Emily and I, like that was a new thing, a new venture we tried, and it just set up our conversations as well. So I think taking yourself out of the normal day-to-day context that you're in and going somewhere different is a marker for a different kind of conversation to have. Oftentimes as well. It can be sort of a mental trigger for us to sort of set up conversation.
So. And I think this part has a lot to do with your kid too, and knowing your kid. Some kids, it may be best to say, hey, we're going to go to a coffee shop and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk, like mom and daughter or dad and daughter, like, and you're going to have a conversation where it's like, we're going to sit down and we're literally going to talk. And some kids, they'll be awesome in an environment like that. Other kids, you may know, like my kid, like we really need to go do something. We're going to go skip rocks on a riverbank. Or I remember my dad used to take me he'd be like, hey, let's go skip rocks. And now that I think about it right now, it's probably like he was just trying to have conversations with me. Good job, Dad. But also I think he's like skipping rocks. But how much could you, I see what you're doing. How much could you like skipping rocks? But we'd be on the way home and be like, hey, let's go skip rocks on the creek bed. And that was also a way that was something that we would enjoy and we'd go do. But that was something that we didn't have to look at each other. We just skip rocks and you'd just be amazed by how far it went. But you can talk while you're skipping rocks. So it really comes down to knowing your kid and intentionally and purposefully, maybe even praying before, and then setting up like what is an environment that my kid enjoys, that my kid will feel relaxed, and that we can talk. I'd say don't make it to where it's like, oh, you're just tricking me into trying to talk to me, which goes back to the earlier about showing curiosity. If you're like, hey, let's go get ice cream, and you get this like, so what's going on? Like, and it's like, okay, so you didn't want to get ice cream with me? Like you just wanted to like tell me something? Actually do something that shows that you care and love your kid and you enjoy something with them and enjoy it, and then also be curious about their life and what's going on and how you can pray for them or what things they're struggling with or anxious about or dealing with or being tempted by. And don't have to solve the whole problem in that conversation. Just start planting seeds of love, of care, of conversation. So then later it can be easier to enter back into that conversation. Just kind of like your friend who immediately just started talking. That only happens, maybe at dinner with your friend, but that normally only happens when people have begun a regular rhythm of being open, of being real, of having conversations. So start simple, and over time it should expand and flow. Last thing I will say is, well, we already talked about that.
I think I've got one other idea. It's a half-baked idea. Actually, I heard it from another youth pastor at a conference we went to, but there's opportunity for conversation in mile marker events in students' lives. So like transitioning from 8th grade to 9th grade, when a student gets their driver's license, when they do something big for the first time, when they make the team, like looking for those moments to celebrate that are mile marker, big moments in their life that then you can also insert a meaningful conversation into.
Yeah. Those, I think, are going to be the times when you are going to have great conversations. And I'd say it's also what conversations were you having before then that allow those to be
Great
awesome.
point. Yeah.
And I think Aaron says it, or Josh, or somebody, maybe it's you. Someone talks about like the importance of navigating the shallows, and how you navigate the shallows is like,
I've never heard this.
okay, I think maybe it's Aaron or Josh, but it's something about navigating the shallows well, or you'll never get to like the deep end, basically.
I like that.
And how you navigate your normal life and your normal rhythms of life is then going to be monumental when you get to those bigger life moments of now we're really going to have a great conversation. But if you're just separated and like you're not connected and you're distant, and then they get to a large conversation or a large moment in life, it's going to be like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, and they'll probably just be like, yeah, thank you. I'm really excited. Like, I'm going off to college. Like, it's going to be great. And you just missed out on the opportunity, which is where it says on page 56, it says, don't wait until a crisis arises to try to cultivate conversation. And I feel like we often do that, or I often will do that, is I wait until life goes bad to then try to have a deep conversation with a kid. That conversation is only going to be deep if I was good in the shallow water as well. So I'd say both are take advantage of the big moments, but set up for those moments and how you navigate the small moments as well.
Love it.
In conclusion, I'd say, that's kind of fancy to say, in conclusion, to finish the podcast, that's maybe a little bit more natural. As we close,
As we wrap up.
as we wrap up this
Tie a bow
shindig
on
that
it.
we're doing, as the popsicle becomes almost all the way gone, and
As the crow flies.
yeah, whatever you really want to say. On page 57, the book says this, and I think this is a beautiful way that it closes the chapter. It says, you are, apostrophe though, you're depositing relational equity into their account that they'll be living off of the rest of their lives. You're depositing relational equity into their account that they'll be living off the rest of your lives. And I wrote underneath it, what are you depositing? And what are you investing into their lives? And considering every day there's an opportunity to invest more or to just leave what you've invested. If you know anything about investing, the more you invest, the more it grows. It's a crazy concept. But the more you invest, the more it grows. So every day, view as another opportunity that you have a chance to invest another thing into your child's life or to take away. So are you going to deposit care, curiosity, love, the truths of the gospel, the Father's heart for your kid? Or are you just going to move on? And I have to think about this often for myself. It's like I talk about this a lot, but I can often just see people, manage people, keep the group together, navigate what's going on, and miss out on real people that I could be investing real love, real care, real truths by getting to know them, knowing their story, knowing their heart, so I can better encourage them with what the gospel says about who they are and what the gospel says about what he's done for them, which is ultimately the point of all this is to show the love of the Father, to love God, to love others, and to point them to the truths of what Jesus has done for them, and that there's life in full and life abundantly found in Christ. So as parents, continue the hard work of investing and of depositing. You know, with an investment, it often takes a long time to see a return, and it can become worrisome, exhausting to look and to not be seen that return or not be seen the reward on investment. But continue it and keep pushing in, keep praying, keep loving, and don't become weary in doing good. Don't become overwhelmed. Navigate tomorrow, navigate today, and let the Lord handle the growth in the process, the long process of sanctification and of growing in the knowledge of Christ. So, parents, we love you. We're thankful for you. Get ready for chapter 5 next week.
Boom.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for watching.
You can follow us on Instagram at The Couch Time Podcast.
Let us know what you thought about the podcast. Also, let us know if there's any topics or things you'd like us to cover. You can comment and email us at podcast@graceky.org.
Please like, subscribe, and share the video with other parents.